Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. It's Alan, the Comic Collector Geek, and I'm joined with my Monday special partner, the Lemon Treeing. He's a new partner of this show. I don't know who the Lemon Treeing is, but let's check. He's the man of many names. I'm going to see if I can get that branded, where I can keep on referring to you as like 20 different names, and then people will be like, "Oh, that's Steven, the man of mystery, the man of many names," and you
I'm very confusing.
know,
Or should I say confused?
confused. So yeah, so it should be good. I don't know. We'll see what we can do.
Good enough.
But yeah, but you're definitely lemon treeing today, and
Mm,
worthy lemon treeing. I
yeah.
actually feel like what you have to show. It's not a huge amount of things you're going to show, but
Mm-mm.
it's the substance. It's quality over quantity. I'm going to show quantity because I have no quality. So so it should be
You
good.
have plenty of quality.
Okay, so I got some updates before we get into actually showing some stuff. I'm just going to give a quick update about the comic that I put out. Um, uh, from what I've been told, and this is like, I'm just the messenger, even though it's my book, I'm just the messenger. Um, 70% of the books that people have ordered have gone out. So if you're in that 70%, you're probably your book's either in the mail or you've already gotten it. I've heard from some people that they've already gotten the books.
That's
There
so
was,
exciting.
yeah, it is pretty exciting.
After all this time, that is so exciting.
There was one mistake that was made that I I'm getting rectified, where some of the people that ordered off my special link didn't get their special comic. That is being rectified. They're on a list. That list, there, it was just he forgot to send the extra comic, so he's gonna send them out specially. So you'll get an extra package with the extra comic. So that's all sorted. There was one other thing that I had to say. I actually got the print numbers. The number of books that are actually going to be printed, it is really low. It is really low. So there was like a whole bunch of different variants that we had.
Yes,
No, there was one variant that got a lot of printing, but even that was limited to 75.
that ain't much.
That ain't much. The whole thing altogether, like all the different variants combined, is less than 500.
Well,
So
that is about as exclusive as you can make it and still have it be something.
yeah. So this is very, very limited books. Most of the covers only have maybe 20 that were printed of that cover. So everything's very exclusive. So if you're part of this, the first generation, thank you, because the money basically is going right back into it. I'm not making it's not a money maker for me. It's just it's a passion project, right? So I'm just kind of rolling the money back into it. We're going to be doing a new book, probably starting in March. The process will be starting. Like I'll be getting all the artists together. I've already gotten all the content together. I know what the characters are going to be. It's going to be a cool second book. So that will start in March. One other update. What was the other update? Oh, the remaining 30% that haven't been mailed out to. A lot of them were Canadian. So if you're in Canada and you're wondering where's my book, well, blame the Canada Post, not my team. They it was just that those books got delayed because we couldn't even ship them out because there was
They wouldn't let us.
they
They
wouldn't let
they
us.
wouldn't let us ship. No, they wouldn't let us ship.
Yeah, so that is finally opening up. So those books are going to go out soon too. So all the books should be out by the end of January at the latest. So I just want to give that little bit of housekeeping out there so that people know what's going on.
Very
Uh,
good.
but but the books should be beautiful. You should love them when you get them. Okay, so I'm going to quickly say hi to the chat. A lot of people chatting away here. Okay, we got Mark Mueller. Hi. And then we got the library. Okay, that's interesting. And
Hello,
then we got Eric Casagrande. And then we got Kim Yunin, Matt.
Big Matt.
Oh, he bought some sugar for the lemonade. You're gonna need lots of sugar. There's a lot
It's
of
not bitter.
lemonade.
Believe me, it's extremely sweet already.
Okay. And we got JX here.
JX?
And then we got Darren X.
Darren?
Manuel. Thank you, by the way, for the books that you sent me. That was
Cool,
really nice.
cool Russian books. Very cool.
Yeah, it was very cool.
Nice
Uh,
work, too.
and then we got Mike.
Big Mike?
Uh, and then we got WOT Pro.
I don't know how I feel about this one. I love falling asleep listening to you.
Oh wow. Okay. I hope that's he referring to you and not me. I'm the exciting one that keeps
Well,
people awake.
I just keep the dulcet tones and talking to you.
Yeah. And hi, Jeffrey. Uh, I'm not sure you. I'm not sure what's going on with your order, particularly. Actually, you sort of paused your order, and then I don't know what's going on with you, Jeffrey. So, Jeffrey, you got to reach out to me on Instagram, by the way. And then we got Lyle, Big Lyle,
Big Lyle?
and then we got Adrift
Adrift?
and Susie Q.
Hi, Sue.
You don't know her, do you?
I've seen her a couple times.
Okay, and then we got. Did I say JSS already? I
I
don't
think
think
you
so.
might have, but it's worth saying again. Hi, JSS.
Hi, JSS. And oh wait, geez, so many people. Pre-code thing.
Hello, dear.
Thomas
These are
O'Donnell.
some of these. Hello, Thomas. I'm seeing faces and names and stuff. AG.
AG is
Uh,
Guez. I always wonder how if I'm pronouncing his name right when he asks me questions. And that's it. We've done.
okay.
Yeah, done. So what we're gonna do, we're only gonna do this as 2 rounds. I'm gonna go first, because really I'm gonna try to give Stephen the full platform to really showcase his tree.
Thank you.
Because he really does have some pretty awesome oh,
Hello, Big Nasty. We see
I'm
you.
sorry, I missed you. Okay.
We see you.
Okay, I see you. Sorry about that. So yeah, so I'm gonna show my stuff first, because yeah, really, Stephen has two really great stories. I believe it's really two great stories that you're gonna be telling. If you could tell the one with the pulp first, if you could.
No, that'll be second
That'll be
because
second.
that's
Okay.
something new. That is
Okay.
that is
Makes
that that
sense.
is
Makes
going to
sense.
be that is something new. The other is a continuation from where
Hmm.
it's so I think that I thought about that carefully and I'm certain
Okay.
this is the right way to go.
I'm more excited about the second one. That's why. I'm like, oh,
Okay.
okay. So yeah. So tell them you have an ASMR voice. I think that's I think that's referring to you. My voice is like one of those voices like nails on chalkboard kind of thing. But yeah. Um so yeah,
Radio
so
resonant voice, uh, killer Mike, I guess, but he sounds like an FM classical radio jock, and he always talks so calmly and like this.
mm,
Yeah, I was really upset. Like you can tell that I was very upset by the situation.
you sound
God,
like William
that's
Shatner there.
upset, you
That
know.
sounds like William Shatner.
No, William Shatner would be like, if you remember what I was
Yeah, no,
telling
he
you.
pauses because he forgets his
And
lines.
you know, they asked him why he does that. He says, "Why do you have this style where you stop and you have these gaps?" He says, "To be honest, I'm trying to remember my lines."
Hmm. So, by the way, you know how you hear when you hear your own voice, you're actually not actually hearing your own voice. You hear some different thing. So I'm curious, how does my voice sound? Is it my voice like my voice is like really deep, right? And really like
Well,
resonant.
you sound like Yoko Ono, but go ahead.
Okay. Only when she sings, I think.
Oh God, it's so awful.
That's sort of funny. Like,
The first time I heard Bungalow Bill,
oh,
and
okay.
and then I heard this scratchy voice, I said, well, who is that? And it was Yoko. But
Yeah.
she wasn't breaking up the band. She was
So,
destroying the music.
it's funny. I actually worked with Yoko Ono way back. I mean, this is going back. Like I had an art website, and her agent reached out to me, and I'm like, how the hell am I going to do anything with Yoko Ono's art? I actually had to reject Yoko Ono. to be on my art website because her stuff was like one of her exhibits. This is like a little Yoko Ono segue for some weird reason. Um, One of her exhibits, she would literally sit on a chair, okay, and in front of her would be a pair of scissors, okay, and
Yeah.
the art was you would take the pair of scissors and cut off her clothing. Every person in the audience would get to cut a little piece of clothing off of
She
Yoko Ono.
was
Very odd.
John Lennon talked about that she had this really offbeat, bizarre uh, concept of art, and he said
Hmm.
that the reason he fell in love with her was because she made tea like his mother made used to make. Julia or whatever made tea for him,
Okay.
and she could really make beautiful tea, and that was what really
Okay.
meant so much to him, you know.
I
And so, I mean, I
I've never
guess it's
referred to it
wherever.
as tea before, but okay, sure, I'll go with that.
No, no, actual tea, actual tea.
But okay. Cutting clothing is not art. I would agree. So, but yeah, so it was like, how do I sell that? Like, would I sell the little pieces of her clothing? And I don't know.
Hello,
But
Chonko.
so yeah, so okay, so I'm gonna show my books back
Rock
to
on, Alan.
comics. Okay, so my little foray in here is totally not related to what Steven's gonna be showing, but it's cool stuff. I'm going to show you my a little bit of my Crimes by Women collection. I almost have the complete collection. If I'm lucky in a week, there's a bunch of auctions for this series where it'll fill in all the holes that I have. So if I win all of those, I will have the complete collection. But I'll show you the ones that I do have so far. This is Crimes by Women number 14. And this series was produced by Fox Features Syndicate, and they're just, I don't know, I find them really fun. Um, it's sort of good girl meets crime kind of thing. And you got these women, they're usually either, you know, fighting with the law or, trying to escape or something going on with where they're breaking the law. But they're, these really awesome good girl covers. So this is Crimes by Women, number 14.
Nice.
Yeah. And so some of mine are the Canadian variants. So that was actually the American variant. This is the Canadian variant. And the Canadian variants have a slightly different look. It's very slight. Um, but yeah. And the funny thing about the Canadian ones is the backs. So this is Crimes by Women number 5 from Superior. And the back is like either fun balloons or some weird thing. Like they always have the weirdest ads for the Canadian ones. It's like they're terrific. 100 pages of fun. I'm not even sure what kind of fun they have here.
What is
Uh,
it? Do they send you comics or something? What is it?
yeah, a big fun pack of comic books for $1. You get like 1,000 pages of comics. So that's like you get this little package of comics.
That's a hell of a deal.
Maybe. I don't know. Like it's probably like you know how like they have all those coverless comics. They probably just like ship those out to people. I don't know. So that's Crimes by Women number 5, and this is my favorite of the run. This next one, this is Crimes by Women number 6. I just love the cat fight ones. Like you see. I just think this is such a great cover. It's like you got one girl and they're like ripping at each other's clothes. Very Yoko Ono-ish kind of thing going on here. And then they got the guy in the background
Tut
just
tut.
tut tut.
Tut tut, girls. Tut tut.
He's just like hanging out in the back. He's just like enjoying the action. It's just so fun. So, and like they're really going at it. Like this girl, I think that's a telephone. She's like gonna whack her with a telephone, and she's like trying to rip her eye out too. It's like just a crazy cover.
I love
So,
that. That's a great series.
do I know the artist? I'm not sure who the artist is. It does not say. So, I'm not sure who the artist is. A lot of these, it's like because it was Fox, they weren't really good about saying who the artist was. I think a lot of them were like, not these ones particularly, but Matt Baker worked for Fox, Jack Kamen bunch of those guys, but I'm
and
not sure.
Feldstein, and then also
Felstein,
the bullpen for the Eiger
Iger
House.
House. I was just
They
gonna
had a
say Iger
look,
House.
and
Yeah.
then they would they would borrow the look, and then you would have guys that would do that.
Hmm.
JLO says my nephew asked if you guys are rich because only rich people can afford books like these.
Yeah. We were rich, and then we bought books like these. I don't know how to say it. I don't know. So yeah, this is Crimes by Women number 3. Actually, I got a pretty good deal on these ones, so it wasn't that bad. But they can be a bit pricey.
Well,
Just to
JLO, I will tell you that in my particular instance, many of the books that I have and show were books that I bought clear back in the 90s. In other words, way back when, and I just held on to them. And then
Mhm.
and into the early slabs in like in 2000. And at that time, the market was not what it is now. I mean, the appreciation that has been experienced,
Yeah,
this is what has happened. And even from when I was barely first starting with the first price guides, I remember when the my first Overstreet price guide was the green issue number 3, and I was working as a shoe shine boy at a golf club, was what I was doing for my work. And so I think that it's just that if you happen to do the right thing, I was lucky to grow up when I did because of the books, the prices of the various books. If I was trying to put together what I have now today, there's no way in the world that I could do it. Seriously, I couldn't.
hmm.
I would say the same is true about you too, Alan, wouldn't you?
No. So a lot of the, like, some of my books, some of my collection is like that. But the way with me, I really took advantage of the fact that when I got like out of like my previous house, like there was just so much expense related to my house in the previous house, like 2 houses ago. I was like, spending like $15,000, not like per month, and it was just to live, like just to not even like just to pay mortgage and just like expense of the house. I don't have that expense anymore. So, I'm mortgage free. I don't have that massive debt hanging over me. And when I got free of that, I basically put that money into my collection.
Hmm.
So,
Well, and then of course, just what I did too, I had a collection of firearms that I decided to sell. And
mhm.
then I basically rolled one collection into another because comics are indeed my first love.
Hmm. So yeah, but by the way, we 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 are wait a sec here. We do read the live chat. I just don't always keep up with it. So sorry. Okay. Um so yeah, but quickly, yeah, this is Crimes by Women number 3. This is another one of the Canadian ones. And as I was saying, the ads are a little bit different. This is one of the fun balloons one. Americans don't get fun balloons. There's no fun in America. We only get this funness in Canada. So, uh,
I've talked about this.
the fun balloons are
Yes,
awesome.
yes, Andreas, I did sell all of them. I think I kept just a couple, one that
Oh,
my dad gave me and stuff. Do you know the interesting thing about the fun balloons,
mhm.
which of course is another euphemism for headlights,
I wish
but
they
the
had a
fun
woman with it. I just wish
But
there was a woman.
if a girl was holding that instead of that clown with in the green pants, but the thing is this:
Hmm.
these are war surplus balloons that they use for
I
weather
know.
checking.
I
And
know.
so after the war ended, and
They
the
dumped all the
Canadians
balloons on Canadians.
ordered too many of these, and they said, "What the hell? We got a warehouse full of these balloons we'll never use. What do we do?" I have an idea. Let's call them fun balloons, and the little glasses they give us to look up and to see where the balloon is or to track it.
Yeah.
Let's throw in those like those the 19-cent pieces, the goggles too, and let's just call them fun balloons. And that's how they emptied the warehouse from, at least
I
I think
know.
they did, of all
Yeah,
this
I think they
war
would probably.
surplus stuff, you know?
Yeah, it's awesome. I actually think it's great. Got to figure out something to do with those silly balloons.
Hi, Lao.
Um,
No, they're not spy balloons because they were Canadian sourced. They are not from China.
Yeah, that's more of a Chinese. Hi, Lao. And hi, Christina. Good to see you again. Um,
William Husted.
oh yeah, that's a new name. I haven't seen you before.
Hello and welcome. Nice to see you. Nice to see everyone here today.
Are you,
Thank you.
yeah, it's great to see lots of people here. Are we picking up any new titles? You can see the new titles on the Friday show. We usually show a little bit of the new stuff
Yeah.
on the Friday show.
Hi,
Hi,
Callie.
Callie. So yeah, this is another one that I really like. Crimes by Women number two.
That's my favorite of the whole bunch,
Oh, really? I
besides
like the cat
six.
fight. I like the
No,
cat fight
besides
one.
six, but there is that's an AC Hollingsworth cover.
Hmm.
And that was, I think, the first Crimes by Women that I bought. And mine is a Canadian version. Matter of fact, it's like a 9.0, I think, the one that I got on
Hmm.
that, which is truly a breathtaking book.
This is another Canadian one. I'm not sure if the numbering corresponds correctly either, because this is
I
number
believe it
two.
does.
Okay, so this is number two. I like the girl in the red dress. It's kind of fun stuff. And what is it saying? Three complete true crime stories, vicious female killers.
Wow, with a title like that, how can you go wrong?
Exactly. It's awesome stuff. I like these crimes by women. It is a collection I really would love to complete.
What was on the
Um,
back of that one? Was that Fun Balloons again too?
oh yeah, you can never have enough fun balloons. So
Awesome.
you can never have enough fun balloons. And this one's a Fox one, but it's another one. They're all really great covers. I
They
really like
are.
this one. I like the fact that the smoke is kind of going across her face like that. I think it's just really cool, and she's got her little thing. I think she just murdered somebody. Yeah,
She did.
yeah, you can see the guy's head on the ground. And she's like, now all you have to do is convince them it was an accident. She's just like so nonchalant about the whole thing. It's awesome.
What's on the back?
What's on the back? This one is wallets. See, Americans
I'll
get
tell you,
wallets.
we got wallets and they got fun balloons.
Fun
Something
balloons.
is wrong.
Yeah. So, why was it a 2-0? This one? Um, it's pretty rough. You can see
Spine.
the spine's kind of mangled. It does present really well though. So I don't really care if the spine is a bit crappy looking. Once it's in the case, you can't really see that. So
JX was asking what issue number was the Smoking Gal.
the Smoking Gal is issue number 4. And these are all from like 1948.
Yeah, 47 through 49
Yeah.
is really the sweet spot, and mostly 47 is actually the when it really hits its stride.
But pretty much like I say, oh, I really like this cover. I really love this whole run. I really love this run of comics. So yeah, so this is number 4, and this next one I really like too. I just it's like a really great run. So this next one is Crimes by Women number 7. I just like the fact that she's got the gun in her hand. You can see
Well,
that,
she's showing a little leg and
and
suck
then
the
she's
guys
showing the
in
little leg.
there.
Yeah, she's sucking the guys in. She's doing like oh, come over here, boys. And then she's gonna plug them with the gun. It's awesome. So yeah, it's like this is Crimes by Women number 7. Just a great series. I think it's 15 or 16 in the series, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah,
But
it's something.
K. Munin, that it presents well is the most important thing. Indeed, you buy the book, not the
Yeah,
grade.
not the
Buy
grade.
the book. And Alan had a thing with Mark on the Monday show
Where I was
where they
talking about
show an
that.
Avengers #1 that looked like someone
It's
had put it
awesome.
under a heat lamp and let it fade into almost oblivion. And it had a higher grade than one that looked nicer but had a lower grade. And you go between the two, it's
Which would
no
you choose?
contest.
Which would you choose? Yeah. So
Same thing with the Brenda Star 14 that Alan got,
I
where
picked the
the higher
colors. Yeah.
grade didn't have the same color strike.
Yeah, so I picked it based on the color. You gotta sometimes especially like it's sort of like your cap one. I would actually say your cap one is the same kind of thing. Like your I would rather buy a 1/8 cap one that presents really really well than a like a 4.0 that has some major flaw like a subscription crease that goes down the middle or something like that where it doesn't really present as well. Like I think these.
Structurally it is a 4, but it doesn't look
Just
good. It isn't a
yeah.
pretty book, and I'm all about that.
Okay, so that's actually my Crimes by Women collection. I actually have three others, but two are raw and one is with my SOTI books. So I didn't bring it, but that's
That's
it.
cool.
But that, I think that was a pretty good.
Oh, that's a great representation.
Okay, so I'm gonna go back to you
Yes, they are
and
definitely pre-code. The code came in
1950.
September of 1954, and that's when they started the process. And then by March or so
March,
of
yeah.
1955, the stamps were appearing, the code stamps were appearing, and in 56, that's when they made late 55 going into 56. That's when they made the stamps even bigger, like especially Showcase 4.
Massive.
They make the stamps, they're like blankets. They want to make sure that everybody knows how sanitary everything is.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. So actually, is this a new name?
I think I've seen Cram before, but nice to see you
Okay,
again.
nice to see you. Okay. So lots of new faces. That's always good. I always like to see new faces. So yeah. Okay, so let's all sit under the lemon tree now and get comfy.
No, no pressure.
No pressure. Oh
Um,
wait, hi Jerry. Okay,
Hi Jerry.
okay.
Um, there actually were people. The comic industry itself. No, no, they put the stamp on. They self-regulated before the government could basically
Could do
stop
it.
them,
Yeah.
make them cease operations completely. And they probably would have found a way to make comic magazines that were bigger, like regular magazines that were not affected by the code because it was for comics. Magazines that they later used the magazine format that did not have that proscription. And as a result, they could then show stuff they shouldn't show. Do you know the interesting thing too about the industry itself? DC and Marvel were instrumental in saying what would and would not go, so that they would basically, because they were so big in the industry, especially DC, that they wanted to be sure that what they did was to make the books palatable for the public, and it was enlightened self-interest that they had for this code. And I think that they might have had people, at least one person there. I mean, it would make sense that they would have someone on site that could actually look at stuff and
I
then
think there was
decide.
that was the editor's role. I think in a
And
way.
yeah, and the editor would then be responsible and have to know what it was. And if there were considerations, I don't know what the kickback was on books or how many of them were had to be changed. I know it's they are somewhat secretive, but Alan and I sort of sussed out. I think, and Alan had one of his shows. You can watch it again.
Hmm.
Maybe Alan could link it in or something for that. But where we tracked down who the players actually were,
Yeah.
that were who were the actual people that were doing this, like some draconian, like
Yeah.
like Queen or
Gestapo.
something that was
Yeah.
off with their heads kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, it was a New York office that was handling it all. That's what we did figure out, and yeah, it was a small group that was kind of going through the
And
book.
they didn't test the limits at all. They did very seldom would they test it because they wanted to stay in business.
Yeah.
And that's so where I start a while back, I showed you a copy of Big Shot Comics, number 45, and it was a book that was the provenance. It was from a collection, a pedigree collection, known as the Okajima collection. And the story of the Okajimas is a very rich one. I sent this in to the CGC to have it. Uh, I had it graded and slabbed. I did not have it cleaned, nor did I have it pressed. I wanted to leave the book precisely how it came out of this farm. What happened was during the war, after Pearl Harbor was bombed, um, the Japanese Americans were an easy target because of how they looked. And the fear, especially on the West Coast, for invasion because our fleet was destroyed that we really didn't have anything to protect the West Coast. And the question was, and of course, whether Alaska, they could come in through Alaska or whatever was going on. Later in the war, when Midway was about to happen, the Japanese sent a feint up to Alaska, Attu, and Kiska, the islands in there in the Aleutians. And they basically had a foothold there, and those poor Japanese soldiers, they had no idea what it's like up in Alaska. They just got their asses handed to them. I mean, it was a fool's errand, and they were the fools to think that we would be fooled because we had cracked their code, and we knew it was coming. And a matter of fact, in Midway, they felt it was Midway, but they wanted to be sure before they committed what carriers we had left. And as a result, they basically put in a fake request for water purifiers. And so then the Japanese were very efficient saying everything because they were taught, I mean, they were under orders. And they said, Island X is short on water because they're asking for water purifiers. Well, that was the proof positive that Midway was going to be the target. And so that way we were ready for them and were positioned properly. And then there was a certain stroke of luck with the Japanese trying to decide whether they were going to bomb Midway or arm with torpedoes to take on the ships. And so they got caught. Nagumo got caught with like a 15-minute window to figure out what he was going to do. And then he basically started to have them rearmed. And then when the SBD Dauntlesses dropped bombs on them, all of this, the ordnance, all these bombs and the gasoline and everything else, and 4 of their carriers went down. And that was the end of the Kitabutai, which basically ended offensive operations for Japan in the Second World War. It was a huge thing. But the West Coast was very fearful of this. And I know Oregon was shelled at Fort Stevens and my dad was down at Seaside, which is just a little bit further south of Fort Stevens. Fort Stevens is between Astoria, Oregon, and Seaside. And as a result, there was, the carriage guns that they had, but I digress. I do that with great regularity. So, but because of what happened at Pearl, there was an outcry against these Japanese Americans. And they ended up basically rounding them up and interned them. They basically built these camps, prison camps, in the middle of nowhere. And they were not constructed very well. They weren't ready for the people, and they just flooded them with these poor people who basically lost their businesses. They lost their livelihood. They lost their freedom for no other reason that they looked Japanese. Now, there may have been fifth columnists or saboteurs or spies or anything in and amongst there. I'm certain there probably were some, but it was a blanket thing where you didn't really hear about all those Germans and Italians that were going to be rounded up and put into concentration camps. But the Japanese, they were, because of course we were attacked by Japan. Germany didn't attack us. Italy didn't attack us. Japan attacked us. And it was a sneak attack, and it really was. So with that in mind, these poor people, the names of the two, a gal has a site called Karen's Pages. I recommend that you go see her research on this, because she figured out and did the research to find out who they had previously thought was the Okajima that was collecting these books, and they were incorrect, because the person that was supposedly heretofore thought to be collecting them had left the camp, and there are still books that were being collected while they were still in the camp. So that aced that. But she finally tracked it down to between a brother and a sister. It was George Okajima and Jane Okajima. And the Okajima collection basically was them buying books at the PX of the camp that they were in. And so they took very good care of their books, and the markings that are on these books that were put on by the PX at these internment camps, she was able to figure out what the codes meant. and there were date codes, etc. And so if you look very closely, I don't know how well you could see it, but in the B, you can see there's a 44, which is 1944, and it's April of 1944. And over here, right there by April, there's a 2Q, and that fit into this. And at the top, you can see the O and the K, and then the J coming down for Okajima is written into the trade dress. But as you can see, I have the pedigree label with Okajima, verified that this is indeed, I already knew it was an Okajima, but that it's nice that they see it too. And then this book basically was owned by them after the war. They were there for the entire duration. The post where they were was in the Poston internment camp in southern Arizona. Now, they had a farm just near Fresno, California. A lot of the Japanese Americans were in California, and there were some here in Oregon as well, but the West Coast was predominantly where the Japanese Americans were. And they went to college here, UCLA, and all these other colleges here because they were Americans. And prior to World War II, the Japanese were very helpful with us. Our battleship Oregon struck a rock in the Spanish-American War when they went around the Horn to go back up for the Boxer Rebellion, and they had to go to Nagasaki. And Nagasaki, the port there, basically did all the repairs on USS Oregon. We had a good relationship with Japan, and we had been selling them all the raw materials and stuff, which they then used for war. And then Roosevelt chopped them off, and they were very bent out of shape because the Japanese don't have the natural resources. They had to conquer land to get the resources they needed. Now, with that in mind, when they were interned from 1942 all the way to the end of the war in September of 1945. But they kept the books, and they brought all the books back home with them to their farm near Fresno. And there they sat. And then years later, they were discovered. And then the family, they had a big auction right there at the farm. And there were these sheds and things that were filled that were evidently in very good, high quality or structures that would retain the condition of the books. And they were kept very carefully by George and Jane. And when I spoke to Karen of Karen's Pages about this, she was telling me that sometimes they would do notes. They would put little notes or little messages or something, not messages, but they would put little somethings inside in the book sometimes. So she said, be sure to look through the book very, very carefully to see if anything has been written in there, because there might be a signature you don't know. So I went through this page by page by page, and then a little bit past the middle of the book, I looked down into the binding, and a black hair, like hair off the top of the head, was right in
I
there,
just hated that.
which fell off of either Jane or George's head. It's a long hair, which I think it would have been Jane. So ridiculously, I put it in an envelope, and I've kept it. But it's that it would be the fact that they had held this book, that they had both read this book, and in the internment and the terrible things that the indignities that they suffered is just lousy. And so that's why the history of these books, the pedigree, the Okajimas collected books after the war. And then they basically, when the code came in, they stopped pretty much. That was the end of it. And so there are Okajima books. I have one that was after they got out. But the ones that when they were in the camp and they have these markings on them and stuff is what makes these extremely historic, and a real piece of history. And as far as Big Shot being the title, the value on these books is that they were there and they were signed. it isn't necessarily that Big Shot Comics is the best comic ever made. It has Skyman, and it's a good book. And then Big Shot was a very popular title. But at the same time, it's not Superman or Batman, although there were books like that that they had as well. So this is the story of the Okajima book that I got, and it came back a 7.0 with white pages. Um, and I just left it in the envelope. I actually I contacted Karen because she had done so much, and I said, I mean, this sounds really almost sounds kind of creepy, but would you like this? What I found in the binding? I said, the hair. I mean, because this book was not in the auction that they had. This book was in a stack of books. Sometime I'll be able to tell you, but I'm sworn to secrecy how this book was not part of the auction. There's another story that I will impart sometime to you when I'm allowed to. But this basically sat for decades on just sitting in a stack. And the owner of it, the guy that had it, knew that he had some because he was buying them in the day when they were first discovered. And so that's the story of this one. Um, for a person who basically likes the history of these books and to try to get a vibe on what is going on, when you figure that these people, these Americans, are interned and they're reading about their stories about evil Japanese in this book. I don't know how many exactly. You could look that up on the
I
CGC
think
boards.
I think
They'll
it's
give you
about
a
a
good idea.
thousand to two. I think it's about a
I think
thousand
a
books.
thousand to 2,000, something like that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
honest don't hold me to it. I can't remember. I don't know. So, but these kinds of things, as opposed to the Mile High collection, which was just an unbelievable collection of fabulously well books that were kept in perfect condition, in perfect uh, 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 circumstances. The books themselves were beautiful when purchased, and they were kept in a cool, dry, dark place for decades until they were discovered, and they changed everything with the grading and everything else the Mile Highs did. All the other pedigrees that are there basically are, they somewhat take a page out of the book of the Mile Highs as a group of books that are of high value. And the reason they had pedigrees even in the day was because we had no CGC. There was no third party grading. And so when someone would say, "Well, the book is a very good book," and then you get the book and it's trash, you said, "That's not a very good book." They said, "Well, it is to me." With the third party grading system, then you can buy a book and know that you're going to be damn close to what the grade is on the book. Structurally, you're going to get it's what you're going to get. But in the day before that, if it was a pedigree like the Mile Highs, then that was your pedigree. That was your CGC, was that you knew that all of the copies from the Mile High, damn near every one of them, is close to, if not the highest graded copy of that book. And it was the first and one of the most, if not the most comprehensive original owner collections ever. But the pedigree for Okajima is more history based than it is voluminous numbers of books. It is that the books that are there from the pedigree were there and were history themselves for people who were affected by history. And this is very close to me because I worked, our family business is the Imperial Hotel in Portland, Oregon. We had the Mallory as well. But when I got out of college, I went to work at the hotel. I had worked there over many years, switchboard operator, desk clerk, bus boy, houseman, all these jobs, so that it developed then that I decided I would go into the family business. Although my father didn't force me, he said, "I have a job, but you're welcome to try. If you want to try, try." And so I did, and it worked. And one of the cooks that we had a very popular restaurant, and breakfast is where you make all your money. And good breakfast cooks are worth their weight in gold to be able to cook consistently beautiful breakfasts. And there was a gal that worked for us named Grace, and her married name was Inui. She married a guy from Hawaii. But she and her mother, her family, were interned during the war. A nicer, more wonderful woman you never met in your life. and an absolute blue chip cook, just an ace employee for our company. And when they started to talk about reparations, and because I was a student of history, and I tread very carefully on this because I didn't want to make her upset, but she was very open about it. She said, "No, my mother is still alive, and she's hoping. Her main hope is that she hopes to stay alive long enough to get the reparation that is going to be coming, assuming that it finally comes." And unfortunately, the Congress dragged their feet long enough that her mother passed away, and all she wanted the money was to give to her children, to basically have something for her trouble and for being basically interned during the war. I think that Grace finally got her a reparation because she was there, of course, as well. So the fact that someone as nice as Grace, they had a flower business here in Portland, and it was a good business. And then their property was then they had to sell it off for nothing. Their business was destroyed. All of the money that they had put into it, all the hard work to build the business was lost forever, and they had to start completely over. So that's basically the story with the Okajimas and why this is such a, for me, is such an interesting historic book and pedigree. And if I'm going to do my best to try to find at least a couple more of these if I can down the road. But this is the story, and this is the book that I have, and the history that is behind it. So that is part one
Part
of
one.
the of my thing. Now, the second part, Alan made and alluded to this in buying a book. One of the top six books that are in the continuum are the very top books in the comic book field. Are Action 1, Detective 27, Superman 1, Batman 1, Marvel Comics 1, and Captain America #1. Those are the top. You could say Detective 31 is a very valuable book, but all that is but it's a beautiful cover. Um, but it isn't the #1, and it isn't the first appearance. And so, with that in mind, the various those are the super grails, if you will, of our hobby. And I had an opportunity recently where a dealer that I've dealt with many times, and great guy, his name is Jordan Seymour of Semperfi Comics, and he had come into a copy. His favorite book is Captain America #1, and he came up, he got the book, and then I saw it on an ad on eBay, and then I asked about the book, and I had bronze books that I had purchased in 2013 was when I bought them, basically defensively, and they had gone up in value. And so I took a big chunk of them, and he gave me fair market value. And then I also had to, which were woefully inadequate to get to the book, the cost of the book. And so I always feel like this, that if you are asking for something, if you're trying to get something, you have to give something. So if a dealer is going to do business with you, then you can't just give him 15 long boxes of the Ferret and Turok #1 and get a Captain America #1. They have to be actual books that the dealer can sell. Otherwise, if you're in business, you got to be in business. And so we worked out the deal, my Amazing Fantasy 15, and then 9 other books, bronze keys, the usual suspects, went to him, and then I traded him straight across for this copy of Captain America #1. And this book, again, historically, is a very, very important book because the story of Captain America is of a man who is not a good specimen, who a super soldier serum has been devised to basically make our soldiers or make men into super soldiers to fight against evil. Very altruistic, very noble. And the story is that The doctor, they have a 4F guy named Steve Rogers who they inject with and the story is, the origin has been told many times. And in the Silver Age, they had the story in Avengers 4 or whatever they had, and they had actually talked about it a couple more times. You know, they review and Tales of Suspense had it, I can't remember, 68 or 65 or whatever number it was. They retell the origin of Captain America again. But this was the origin. It's a Simon and Kirby book, a great team working for Martin Goodman of Timely Comics, which then eventually turned into Marvel. And this book came out almost a year before Pearl Harbor was bombed. It came out in late December 20th, I think, 1940. And this book was the first time that Adolf Hitler was uh, vilified on the cover of a comic book, and also by name. They name him Hitler. They call him Hitler. It is Hitler. And this is before America's even in. There was no great outcry from the government about this, because we already were, to some degree, we were helping England with Lend-Lease and some other things too. And so with that in mind, this book was really a revelation that a publisher would take I mean, and I think that there were some pro-German groups and some other outfits that complained to them about this. They saying, "Why are you saying these bad things about Germany and all this stuff?" But Mr. Goodman, I believe a Jewish fellow, had relations in Germany, and also not only relations, but he had friends. And what was happening in Europe and what Hitler was doing was so god awful. And so that's why this book is really something special, and an original character. There are all manner of nuances, and I've gone over those, but I wanted to talk about the origin though. The story by Simon and Kirby was about a weakling who was turned into like a Superman. That he was injected with this super serum. And then, of course, the Nazis had gotten a spy in there, and they killed the doctor before he could write down the super serum formula, or no one else could make it but him, and then he got killed. And so there would only be one, and it would only be Captain America, would be the only super soldier we had. And so that story of that, yes, it does. It's, again, I say to you, and I mean this sincerely, is that if you are looking at a book like this and you're coughing up, north of $120,000 worth of value, the book has to look pretty. This could be a 2.5 and be faded out completely. But why would you want? I mean, if that's if that's the only chance you have, and if you prefer the structural, I myself am all about the colors in comics. I always have been. So I would take a lower grade that looks beautiful than I would take a higher grade that doesn't look good. That's just how I am. So with that in mind, but the story is a very seminal one. And Simon and Kirby came up with this. And recently I became aware that Marvel was a name that Goodman was using already on pulps. And a friend of mine put me wise to this. And then what it is a full month before Captain America #1 came out in November of 1940, this pulp came out. And in this pulp is a story called The Cycle. And The Cycle is a story about a 4F guy, a weakling, who is injected with a super serum, and the pictures are illustrated by Simon and Kirby. And for all the world, it looks just like Steve Rogers. And the story goes on to tell about this individual who has been injected, ends up going through a cycle where he will evolve all the way to the top and then devolve all the way down to the bottom in a cycle, like it from a Neanderthal man all the way to a futuristic man, back to the Neanderthal man kind of thing. And it was because of this super serum that had been injected into him, and it tells the story of the cycles of his life going through time. It's a very interesting science fiction fantasy story. And I will see if I can. I
Because
took
the art,
I
there's actually some art for it too. It's not just a text story. It's got
no,
art.
there is not, there is art. I have pictures. This is, so that you know, this is Marvel stories, um, Marvel stories from November of 1940, and I don't see a number on it, but that's what it is.
Can you show it?
Um, and it's a 15 center. And so what I did was I took some pictures of the I got some pictures of the interior of the book, to see what was going on with the. Let me see if I can pull these up, because it's interesting where they are, and I'll see if I can show. I believe my camera is good enough to do this for
Okay.
you. And I couldn't believe what I was looking at. Um, okay, here we go.
So yeah, so actually it looks like the exact same art that was actually even used in the comic. So there was a overlap between the pulp and the comic in terms of even the artwork, which is interesting. So it's not just
It was almost as if they used one of them. They used the
same
pulp
panel.
as a template for the. So here, let me go here.
Maybe zoom in. Can we
So
get it?
there is Steve Rogers, and there is the story of the cycle, and there is the doctor injecting Steve Rogers, just very similar to Steve Rogers, but it's some other guy.
And like if you read Cap One, you'll actually see a panel that looks almost the same as that. It's like very close.
The other thing that they have in here is that they have the first advertisement in this for the Human Torch as well. Here
That I
is.
can't see at all.
I know. Just I'm trying to show it as best I can. It just doesn't want to play ball.
No.
But this is the thing about this issue. If you go online, you can see it. But it basically, they say, has the first ad for Human Torch. But what they don't talk about is that this has basically the Steve Rogers story,
Yeah, I
with
would say it's a prototype.
by
Yeah.
another name, but illustrated by the same people that did Simon and Kirby, who did Captain America #1 1 month before Captain America came out. And as you know, with comic companies, never waste a good idea. And if you
Hmm.
have a good idea, use it. And if you can, use it again. And if you can't, use it again. And so this was one that they basically ran with, that this story, that they decided to go ahead and do it. And it
Hmm.
is indeed a prototype of Steve Rogers as Captain America without the costume or whatever, but the premise of the story is identical, about a guy, a 4F, being injected and becoming a superhuman guy to try to do good. And so that's it.
Yeah. So I mean, I feel like that is part of what you need if you're gonna get the Cap One. You might as well have that book. It's like it kind of
Might
finishes
as
the
well.
collection.
So anyway, I am making an effort to not really show this all that much because it's too special a book to just arbitrarily pull it out all the time. But I wanted to share this with you specifically because on account of that Marvel Stories pulp is something that is historic in that it was a month before the actual book came out, and the notoriety and what have you, and the success of Captain America as a character. He's one of the big three of Timely, which is Captain America, the Human
Human
Torch,
Torch.
and Submariner, or
Mm-hmm.
Prince Namor, if you will. And
Mm-hmm.
those are the three. And then there are other characters that came in, but those are the big three.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought it interesting too that the big three for DC were Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
But the big three for Timely were all men. They didn't have a woman. And I find that very interesting that DC found the value in having a woman as a positive, heroic character at a time when women were, well, the angel is a man.
Yeah, no, no, but he'd be part of the big four, I guess, for Marvel.
No, no, no. The angel, the destroyer, the vision,
They were all sort of secondary.
the
Yeah.
wizard, the and the angel. None of those were definitely low second tier,
Mm-hmm.
if you will, because but with the difference with DC also, this is my opinion. The difference with DC was that Sheldon, Shelley Moldoff, and what have you, All American Comics, which was the off break when the two guys were arguing about the DC and I mean as far as National Comics and All American. The All American characters are incredibly good. Flash,
Flash,
Green
Green
Lantern,
Lantern,
and Wonder
Wonder
Woman.
Woman.
These
Yeah.
three and but then you have the next ones down. You have Wildcat and
Wildcat,
Mr. Terrific
Mr.
and some of
Terrific.
these others that they have there. But the idea was that when the merge happened, Wonder Woman was very popular, but she was all by herself. As far as with the big companies, Wonder Woman was it. And two titles, three actually, when All Stars started. All Stars where she started, and then
Mhm.
Sensation and Wonder Woman also. She had three titles,
And Comic
maybe.
Cavalcade, four.
Right, and what is that? And Comic Cavalcade.
Cavalcade, yeah.
There's your fourth. So they utilized Wonder Woman extensively, and so the girls that wanted to collect comics as well, there was someone that was positive and good that they could have. And Timely did not do this. And I think that part of the reason why Timely had such trouble after the war was
Hmm.
because the infrastructure of their characters was not as well developed as Batman and the Commissioner Gordon and all those, and the sustainable the repeat the cast, the Rogues Gallery, and Superman and the Daily Planet and all that. Again,
Well,
Blonde
was
Phantom was there,
small.
but she was a very Namora. They were very
And they had
small.
Golden Gal as well, which was
Sun
another.
Girl,
And
Sun
Sun,
Girl. So they were around, but they were
but they
not.
weren't
And you
big
can't count Miss Fury because that was Tarpe Mills. That was a character they just reprinted her newspaper strips.
stuff. Yeah.
So anyway, I just as a sort of took a turn there, but anyway, I wanted to share this with you all tonight about the Okajimas again because I got it back, and I wanted to share with you the history. It's history all the way through with me tonight
Hmm.
because, and Alan has heard me say this till he's blue in the face and bleeding from the ears, is that when you go to a movie, you suspend your disbelief, and then you go and you enjoy the movie for what it is. But with me, the way I look at it, I apply this to comics, and I suspend my modern man view of the
Hmm.
world and my life experience to
And try
regard the
to think
history of
back
the
then.
books when they came out and what forces were at work for these kids. What were they listening to? What was in the theaters? What was going on in the war? What was going on with their family and their friends who were involved in the war? And how surreal it was and how really real it was. We have a push button war anymore here. It's a
Hmm.
push button war. Back then, it was not push button. It was ships are going to come ashore and they're going to take over your country.
And
And
you
it,
might get drafted tomorrow as well.
and
You know,
and
if you're a
not
kid.
only you, but and then all of their family that either were lost or anything else, and into that, into and the newsreels showing it, the into that crucible of the United States and the war and the world at war, to be sitting on your living room carpet reading a Captain America Comics #1 while the Battle of Britain is going on, and you're
Hmm.
listening to Edward R. Murrow on the radio talking, "This is London,"
Hmm.
and then the blitz is going on, and I'm down here, but you can hear it, and boom, 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 and all
Well, the
that.
whole thing is
Just
it
put
must have
yourself in
been
that. Last thing,
yeah,
I'll just say one more thing, but
yeah,
putting yourself in that position and try to fuzz your mind to basically put yourself in that position. It is surreal to
yeah.
read those books, to read the books that you are reading in that fashion for what they were going through, and it just adds so much more depth and color and historical reference to how these books were. So that's me.
Well, the whole thing is if you look at that time period when that book came out, it looks like Hitler's going to take over all of Europe. Britain's going to fall. They all, France fell into a couple of weeks. It was like, it just like, the dominoes were all falling. And
You mean the vaunted Maginot Line?
yeah, like, it looked like that America was next, right? Like world domination
It's
was
not like we
happening.
were. They didn't have the tech, and the reason they couldn't invade the West Coast was because the distances and the technology to deliver
Hmm.
supplies necessary to prosecute the war were not there.
Oh,
They
yeah, I'm
couldn't
not saying
land
that this
enough
could have
people,
happened, but
and all the people of the United States are armed because we have a Second Amendment. So these guys,
mm,
if they come ashore, every hunting rifle and scope and
I
gun
know.
that is available would be on these people, instantly shooting them.
But
It's not
I'm not
like we
saying
were
that's
sitting there with
realistic, but
bamboos like mainland Japan. They were going to
mhm,
be standing there with sharpened bamboo sticks to take on the Americans,
yeah,
women,
yeah.
children, everybody like that. No, the United States, we're all armed. We're not
Hmm.
unarmed. The first thing a country does to subjugate its people is to disarm them. If
Hmm.
they cannot fight and they cannot defend themselves, then they are then taken. That's why
Hmm.
the United States set it up the way we do. The Second Amendment protects the First, etc. So,
Yeah, I don't think they were planning on taking over the US. I'm not saying that they could even do it. I'm actually saying that there was a palpable fear of the Germans escalating, that the war was coming to America. And uh, you know, the writers of Simon and Kirby, like, they were thinking, we are hearing stories of Jews being like bad things
rounded
happening to
up,
rounded up,
rounded up at that point.
and God knows what's happening to them. And there's this fear that, which way is the U.S. going to go? Is it going to join on the right side and fight against this force of evil, really? And they wanted to put it out there that, hey, Hitler is the bad guy. We're going to be fighting him. Let's go to war against him. Um,
But we
eh,
didn't even have to do that because evidently one of Franklin Roosevelt's vice presidents was friendly with some Japanese ambassador. I can't remember the entire story, but there was a thing
mm,
about, he was talking about a plan that Roosevelt had for how many tanks and how many planes and how many ships and
mhm,
how many guns and everything else would be necessary if the United States was drawn into the global conflict. And the plan that he had was not super secret, but it was pretty secret. Well, in any
mhm,
event, this vice president, whoever it was, whichever one it was, I can't remember which, sort of let the cat out of the bag as far as what that was. And then they ended up transmitting that information to Japan, who then shared it with Germany. And Hitler said, basically, Hitler applied his standard to us. That is to say, what would I do? He says, I know exactly what I would do. And so when Japan hit us and we declared war on Japan, I believe it was, I'm not sure if it was Wallace or if it was the other one. But
mhm.
nevertheless, what I think it was Wallace though. Thank you, Matt. But the upshot of it was when we declared war on Japan, Hitler unilaterally the next week declared war on
War in the
us.
U.S. Yeah.
We didn't declare war on Germany. Germany declared war on us. So
Mhm.
that's how it was. It was just one, two, three, and then there we were, much to the joy of Churchill. And then
Mhm. Yeah,
also,
Churchill
then
was needing more
a
help.
little bit later, Stalin, who wanted a second front because he was getting basically his country was being destroyed by the Germans making the same mistake that Napoleon did going into Russia. You can't take all of Russia; it's too big.
Well,
And then the winter came, and that was the end of it. So,
so I always feel like whenever like because Canadians we were brought into the war right at the beginning.
yes,
Um, so I always feel like if you look at the First World War and the Second World War, really the the Allies were winning, but what really turned the war, kind of meant it was going to end soon was whenever the U.S. came in. Once the U.S. came into the Second World War, it was basically like a
fait
countdown.
accompli.
Yeah,
But it
it was
was
gonna.
going to, but there were any number of things that could have transpired where the fact that the technology was not such that we had the Pacific and the Atlantic, we had Canada and we had Mexico.
Mhm.
And so we were insulated as the arsenal of democracy. And the interesting thing is we bombed the hell out of Berlin and we bombed the hell out of Tokyo and their
Mhm.
infrastructure. And then with the Warren Plan, or with the was it not the Warren Plan? It was uh, the plan that was by the head guy, the
MacArthur.
strategic. No, it wasn't. MacArthur was in Japan and implemented it. I can't think of the name. But nevertheless, the plan that they had was to help rebuild. So when they rebuilt, all of the
Mhm.
old machinery that they had, all the antiquated machinery they were making do with to prosecute the war, they got brand new equipment. And
Oh
in
wow.
Germany as well, they all got brand new equipment to start to reset their economies. So then later on, when America is still using old equipment because we would use it up, and then both Germany and Japan had brand new manufacturing machines, and we're it's just sort of an interesting thing. And how evil we are, but we basically help rebuild them. It was
I think that was
Marshall, the
actually
Marshall Plan,
a
George
Marshall Plan.
Marshall.
Yeah, a Marshall Plan.
George Marshall was the absolute brains of the United States for the war, and Marshall wanted to be able to go and fight. And Roosevelt said, "There's no way in God's green earth you are going anywhere." And that's why
Mhm.
Eisenhower got chosen. But that was more because of his ability to be political as well as military at the same time. He was one of MacArthur's aides and what have you, much like Nixon was involved in those areas too. So there's a lot of history,
But
and
I felt like I think they learned from the First World War because what happened in the First World War is you put reparations, you put all this kind of crap on Germany, and it just pisses them off, so they're going to commit another
well, they had
war
nothing
later.
to lose. They had
Yeah,
absolutely
they had
nothing to
nothing to
lose.
lose. This time they learned from the mistake of the past and then said,
the
okay, we're
the
not gonna.
atrocity of Versailles.
Yeah.
And what did Hitler do when he took France and he took Paris? The first thing he did was he basically rescinded
The
the
treaty.
shame of the armistice on the
Mhm.
same car. And then after that was done, they put a whole bunch of explosives into the rail car and blew it to smithereens.
So yeah, so I mean, they did learn from the Marshall Plan was a good plan in that respect that they rebuilt their enemies in a way, which is interesting. That's the first time in history where you have that. Usually they salt the earth, like, I
No,
mean,
they
literally.
burn it down and salt the earth. Do you
Yeah.
know the interesting thing too? And then I'll get off this.
Mhm.
Was that the Japanese? The Americans could not basically keep order in Japan. We didn't have the wherewithal to do it. And so what the Marshall Plan did and what MacArthur did was he left because of the honor code with Japan, they had lost face. And so
Mhm.
they were accommodating to our occupation, but also they left the Japanese soldiers armed to then basically keep order in Japan. And so that's how they kept
Mhm.
order. The Japanese army kept order in Japan by an okay by MacArthur and Marshall because it was the most logical way for them to keep order, and they did.
Hmm.
Isn't that amazing?
The Japanese
I mean,
mindset though is a
culturally.
little bit, yeah, they're very different. Like once you win, they respect the winner in a way. It's a very
And if
different
you lose, they treat you like they
crap.
did
Yeah,
to the
you're
poor
subhuman. You're
poor.
subhuman at that
Well,
point.
they what they did on Corregidor and Bataan.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's
It's
horrible
just
stuff.
and what they did to Nanking, the losers,
Hmm.
they had no value. They had no okay.
Yeah. Okay, so that was a very good comic history there. It has nothing to
Well,
do with
that
comics.
again, Alan again, and then this is it. I'll just close with this. The
Mhm,
fact is that if you understand history of the world and the history of our country in relationship to what was going on in the world
mhm,
as these books were coming out, like Tales of Suspense, we were in Vietnam,
mhm.
and they had Red Chinese, and they had Khrushchev
Yeah.
banging his foot on the desk, with Tony Stark. I hate Tony Stark.
Hmm.
Those things, the comics don't really do this that much now.
They
But
are
back
capsules of history. Like they
but back in the golden age, they basically called it plain because this was our existence was at stake. And so to be able to fathom this and understand how these books come out, it's just a very rich. If you can embrace that and allow yourself to go there, it really is an amazing feeling.
Mhm. Okay, so I hope you guys all enjoyed this lemon tree experience and got lots of lemon. Um, your vitamin C intake, you don't have to worry about it for a while. No more rickets. So yeah, so thanks again, Stephen. It was a
Thank you.
very fun night.
Thank
And
you.
thanks everyone for hanging out with us. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much.